Here's our presentation, so let's start. Yeah, I'm glad to welcome you to my Senior IT Recruiter course for recruiters. And today we have our first presentation and we have our first webinar. And the name of this webinar is The Beginning of the IT Recruiter's Journey. Where did you end up? I think this is going to be very interesting, so let's start. Why would you want to do that, to participate in this course? You save time because you take just one course, 10 webinars, instead of 6 different courses at once. You will see that the program of this course is 6 times bigger than the average HR recruitment course. Then, in 2.5 months, or maybe even sooner, you learn what not all IT recruiters learn in 2.5 years because it's so intensive, it's so huge with lots of information, tools, and everything. And here you get links to closed IT chat rooms, website listings, ready-to-use search terms, plugins, contact source secrets, email templates, and many other things that recruiters save for years and never share with others. So that's what you are going to receive during this course. Here we have the website of this course. And let me tell you about myself a little. I worked in different spheres and in different industries. It was financial industry, multimedia industry, and of course, IT industry. I started my IT career from Wargaming, which is very, very famous company and well known in the whole world. It's one of the leader in game development market. Then, of course, Preply. Preply was a teeny startup company when I joined the company, and now it's a huge company with famous name and lots of customers, or they call it students, all over the world. And then Ideals. It was not so big IT company, but with a great history. And I helped this company to restructure a little and to introduce modern IT recruitment solutions. I built recruitment teams from the scratch here in Ideals. The same actually I did in Preply. And I introduced sourcing in both of these companies. I mean, Preply and Ideals. So this is like very interesting experience. And now I have my own HR Academy, which is the name of Mike Pritula Talent Academy. And I am HR advisor for PeopleForce, one of the best all-in-one HR solution. And it also has ATS, applicant tracking systems, that I highly recommend for every recruiter. Great. In my work and in my career, I bet on best practices. I also prefer to learn from these companies. I like to discover new research surveys and new approaches. So I highly recommend you to follow all these companies and maybe even more than this. But this is a very beginning for you to follow. And of course, during this course, I will share with you lots of different sources, links, and everything. Great. So on this course, you will have your homeworks that as soon as you accomplish all of them, you will receive our diploma, which is very good. It looks good. And you can implement it or attach it to your LinkedIn profile. So your LinkedIn profile will include this diploma. And one more interesting thing about this diploma, that we provide this diploma, or we issue this diploma on the well-known platform. More than 1,000 companies issue their diploma on this platform, and more than 1 million diplomas issued each month. And as you can see here, it's Google Cloud, it's Slack, it's Zendesk, it's Harvard University. And you are going to have the diploma on the same platform, which is great, I think. This course is based on IT recruitment competency model, and it includes 6 different directions. First, it's IT industry. We will learn everything about this industry. Then IT technology. We will learn about different technologies. Then, of course, IT people, how they act, what they like, how to approach them. Then we will learn about IT positions, the most common IT positions like developers, product managers, support people, and everything. And also we will learn about IT recruiters, IT recruiting, how to do this job, how to use different tools, and IT tools are specific tools for IT recruitment. So I think that in this course, you learn as much as 6 different courses, and that's great. Just for 10 webinars, you receive lots of information. Here is the program of the whole course. It's focused on everything you need to know to be just maybe one of the best IT recruiters ever. Just 10 classes. And today we will learn in IT industry block, the history of IT. In technology, we will talk about networking basics. Then we will talk about portrait of an IT professional. In terms of position, we will talk about supports and sales. In IT recruitment, we will talk about recruitment application or requisition. And in IT tools, we will learn about fundamentals of sourcing. So let's start. Great. History of IT. First generation computers were introduced in 1940-1955. It was vacuum lamps based computers. You can see this picture of this lamp. It was quite big. I remember from my childhood, I saw this kind of lamps, but not in computer. It was my TV, my grandma TV. Data was stored on magnetic disks, and it was like very huge, these computers. One of the first was the Mark I. They consumed huge amounts of electricity and generated a lot of heat. That's why lots of bugs would swarm in and make nests. So PC repair was often a matter of getting rid of the bugs. Now that's why they call it, I have a bug, or we have to fix these bugs. Here how it was looked like. Very interesting, very nice, but it's huge. Imagine this one at your home. And first languages, I mean, programming languages, they were binary. The brain, in quotes, of these early machines was based on the concept of switches and relays, just to position on and off. That's very interesting. The whole language was based on this, and binary language itself was invented in India 800 years before the Christ in mathematics and used two numbers, 0 and 1. Now it's called low-level programming, and it's where we communicate directly with the chip. And here you can see the first programs. They were printed on these cards with all these holes, meaning that holes and not holes are ones and zeros. So actually it was just like 1 and 0, but it was printed. And there was a reader of this. And also there was a tape, also with all these holes and not holes representing 1 and 0. And code in binary format looks like this, just zeros and ones. That's it. Very interesting, very funny. Yeah, that's how it worked. And here example of IT humor. There are only 10 people, we can read it as 10, but actually it's 10. 10 types of people in the world. Those who understand the binary system and those who don't. If you got it. Great. ENIAC was the second PC person. Actually, it wasn't PC, right? It was a mainframe. It's not, now we call it PC. Yeah, but this is funny. 17,000 500 bulbs was in this machine. One bulb worked up to 2 days before replacement. Imagine this. You have to always replace these bulbs. 167 square meters needed for this computer, like a great apartment, 30 tons the weight. And most of the programmers were women. That's interesting, women. Now lots of programmers, lots of software developers, they are men, but previously a lot of them were women. Yeah, but now actually it's becoming diverse. In Preply, we hired so many great women developers that we almost built the diverse team in terms of gender. And as the first computers was Zeus, Z3, Colossus, Atanas, Berry, Binag, Etsak, Siag, this kind of computers. And this is funny. It was about the prediction. All you need to know about predictions. The computers of the future may weigh no more than 1.5 tons. And this quote from Popular Mechanics, 1949, in an article that makes predictions about the future of technology, right? That's how they saw it in the future. Second generation computers was in 1955, 1965, and they were based on transistors. The transistor revolution happened at that time, and you can see these tiny transistors. Imagine if the lamp like a big finger, it's the lamp, or maybe even bigger. This chip as a nail. It's not actually a chip, right? It's rather it's like something before the chip, but it's like a nail. I had this in my childhood from my friend. His father's worked as a electrician or something like that, radio mechanic maybe. And I collected this. They were very funny, and I even remember this and that. Yeah, and they still be used now. Yeah, they call it transistors. They were cheaper and more reliable. Bell Laboratories invented it, and one transistor could perform as well as 40 bulbs and with no heat. That's amazing. Resistor computers were called mainframes. Second generation programming languages were assembler and higher level programming. Actually, assembler, that's the programming language I learned when I was in my school. Yeah, it was actually, let me tell you this. When I was at school, I had the first computer. It was 1997, and I had my computer. It was 386 S6 as a processor, and I learned Turbo Pascal, then assembler, and then Delphi. So I was kind of keen programmer, but then I decided that programming languages is not for me. I prefer, then I tried to use 3D Studio Max, which is 3D designing software. And then I decided to move on and to focus on different stuff. Yeah, but I had this experience, and this assembler was very different. It wasn't based on ones and zeros. It was based on English commands like add, if, go to, print, and the compiler translated these commands into the language of the machine to ones and zeros. And actually, right now, every computer language is being translated in just ones and zeros in binary code. Here is an example of assembler code. It looks much better. Yeah, and then the third generation comes. 9065, 9070, integrated circuit like this. Actually, I also remember this integrated circuit. Looks like a teeny bug with lots of different legs. Yeah, but they looks nice. And IBM, at this time, IBM decided to focus on computers, and languages were C, COBOL, Fortran, and computers become business tools. Finally, actually, previously they were like more than scientific tools, and they were used in different universities first. And now they become more business tools like IBM, Z series, Z800. Like it looks like this. Yeah, it's a big computer for a big company. Actually, you can imagine that the size of this computer as big as an elevator cabin, right? So if make it empty inside, a man can go into it, which is very funny. Yeah, and Fortran code, actually, when I was a student, when I was a pupil, Fortran was considered as the most understandable, most like the easiest computer language code. And something like that, Turbo Pascal was. You can see like open, file, write, do, very easy to understand, nothing specific. And there, at that time, Moore's law was invented. Gordon Moore, which was Intel co-founder, he said that processing power of an integrated circuit will roughly double every year. And then later it was corrected that it will double every 18 months. And he was right. Because here on this chart, you can see the Moore law line and actual rate of increase. Exactly the same. Here's the time, and this is my first computer. And of course, now we have much more powerful computers. My iPhone is, I don't know, maybe 1 million times more powerful than my first computer. Then was the fourth generation in 1970s, and right now, Intel 4004 were invented on November 1971. Cheap power equal to first computers with, as you remember, equals to 20,000 lamps. It paved the way for personal computers, and the first one costs $10,000 for that money. But now we know that with the inflation, it equals to $100,000. Bill Gates at that time released Microsoft DOS, and Steve Jobs released Lisa in 1984. It was Apple. And first graphic user interface, the Macintosh. Here's how IBM 51,000 looks like, the first personal computer. As you can see, this monitor is very small because you didn't need to show some videos or play the games. It was just for the text. You don't need the big one for the text. Yeah, interesting. And it looks the same as typing machine because it was going to replace typing machine first. And Apple Lisa was much better with graphic interface, with the mouse, this good design. Yeah, quite good. And here the very interesting video I'm going to share with you just to get the idea of how they see these computers previously. This is an advertisement from 1984 from Apple showing the Macintosh revolution, and they show how their Macintosh compared to IBM.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification directives. We have created for the first time in all history a garden of pure ideology where each worker may bloom.
People like slaves, they just do what they told to do by IBM, and they know how they have no choice. And then Macintosh arrives.
From the pests of being contradictory.
This girl is presenting Macintosh.
Unification of the rules is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
Yeah.
On January 24th, Apple Computers introduced Macintosh. And you'll see
his
why
novel
1984 won't
1984
be
and this
like
logo of
1984.
Apple. This is perfect. Now we see it as funny video, you know, nothing special, but at that time computers were very something strange and new. And this eternal Apple versus Microsoft dispute, who was the first one to invent this graphic user interface. But actually, both Apple and Microsoft, they inspired by Xerox graphic users interface. Xerox, I don't know why they didn't become so popular and famous and rich, but they were the first who invented this graphic user interface with all these Windows icons and pointers and everything. Yeah, and now they talk about fifth generation of computers with artificial intelligence and a concept invented by Isaac Asimov. It's going to be another revolution with more powerful processor, and maybe it will build different keyboards, humanoids, human people, right? Okay, that was the history of computers. Now we are going to talk about the technology, and we will talk about fundamentals of network. Actually, computers are capable of little without communication with other computers and devices. The power of a network in communicating with and exchanging information with other computers and devices. And there are 7 levels of networking, or 7 layers. First, it's applications such as Outlook. Second, computer understandable level of data handling. Third, session level opens and closes sessions between two computers during communication. Fourth, transport layer sends the data. Fifth, network layer routes the data to the correct recipient. Sixth, data communication layer connects the data to the recipient. And seventh, physical layer, equipment and cables. So when we use our computers to send email, our email goes on all these 7 levels and then back to another computer. This is very interesting, and lots of different technologies is being used for sending the data, and network is here, right? Great. So if we exchange one letter from one computer to another, it goes from application through the physical network to another computer and back to application. This very interesting how it works. Then there is another idea, server and client definition. A client is a computer or application that receives information or resources from another computer. When a computer makes a request to another computer, the requesting computer is called a client. And a server is a program or computer system that responds to and executes requests from client computer in a network environment. When a computer fulfills a request, it's serving, therefore it's called a server. In some cases, computers can act as both server and client, and making requests to other servers as a client and fulfilling requests from other servers as a server. That's interesting. And here how it works. The server, usually it's big, it's in data center, then clients, and then they communicate via internet. Also, network could be different. It could be not just server-based when all computers communicate to server. It could be peer-to-peer. When I was a student, my first network that I built was peer-to-peer. So I just bought a router or switch. I connected different computers from other students, and we had our peer-to-peer network. We could share files, we could play games, or even share the internet to each other. Also, network could be local without the internet, like within the one network, and could be wide area network, like global, connecting local network to global network. And there is also VPN, virtual network, virtual private network. It works as a tunnel from one local network to another local network via internet. And it's used mostly for security reasons. Great. Another block of our course is IT people, and we will talk about portrait of an IT person. Here is some example of the research that usually is published by Stack Overflow or HackerRank or other similar website. In terms of the computer roles, the most popular role is back-end developer, and then full-stack developer goes. Then front-end developer, and as you can see, like developer desktop of enterprise application, mobile developers, DevOps, and other guys. So you can see which ones are the most popular and the most presented. Then experience in writing code. The most developers, they have 5 to 9 years of experience. So they're not freaks, they're not geeks, they're not coding from the birth. Lots of them just as an average person is an average years of experience. Education, here is the difference. Lots of them have computer science, computer engineering, or software engineering education, which is obvious. Age, in terms of the age, the median age is about 25 to 29 years. So they're quite pretty young comparing to other professions like doctors. I think doctors are much more, not older, but experienced, let's say. Technology, the most popular is JavaScript, which is all websites built. HTML and CSS, the same. SQL, this is a language for talking to databases. Python, Java, PowerShell, C#, PHP, TypeScript, and other computer languages. Forms of employment. Of course, they are working full-time mostly, but there are also students. There are also some freelancers, not employed people, employed part-time, and a little retired. Size of companies. Most of them work at not big companies. So let's take this 1, 2, 3, 4, and you will see that like 45% of people work at small companies. Yeah, there are plenty of them that work at big companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and others. But this is a rather exception than the rule. Great. It was the portrait. Now we are going to talk about IT positions, and today we will talk about support and sales. So tech support specialist or just tech support, they have the objective to minimize user dissatisfaction with the software by helping and answering questions and tasks, answering user questions, solving user problems, collecting feedback from the users, fixing bugs found by users. Then support. Support could be in different roles. Call logger, it's a very simple role. Receives calls, assigns tickets, categorizes. First line support. Basic technical support solves simple problems with the printer, which doesn't print. Second line support, more advanced people, they solve more complicated problems and need access to the server and database. And third line support, those who reconfigure network and servers, very skilled and certified. And usually company has lots of these guys, less this, and maybe 1, 2, or 3 of these guys. They are more paid. That's why the first requests, they go to these two. And if this request couldn't be solved, then requests go further to these guys and then to that. Great. And here's an example of another example of support layers. There could be also self-service or pre-support. So people could just read FAQ and knowledge base. And very often, if you want to receive the support, you try to find this button, support button, support contacts, but it directs you to knowledge base. And then if you didn't find what you wanted to find on knowledge base, then you could be directed to the real person. Great. Then sales. Sales in IT industry is divided into different directions. Inbound sales, they dealing with leads. they don't prospect leads, they don't find them, they just receive them and call them or write them. Outbound sales, they make cold calls and they search for leads. They use LinkedIn and different tools to find leads. Lead generation, these guys, they actually generate leads via different services. And customer success manager, they usually follow up with customers after the sale. And the idea is to make customer successful and happy with the product. Great. Now we will talk about recruitment request or recruitment requisition. Great. When you are preparing for the search and meeting with the hiring manager, you have to think about and to prepare this information. First, job title and its synonyms, because if you want to find people on the internet, you have to put something into the search engine. So you have to know these synonyms. Donor companies or mapped companies that you understand could be the source of your candidates. Tools used by the candidate as a search term, typical jargon for the position, geography, certifications or licenses, and what you should to exclude from your search. So before the meeting, search for synonyms for the job title as soon as you receive a vacancy requisition form. Search keywords for the position, prepare the list of donors, research professional communities on LinkedIn, Facebook, Telegram, and other resources, and try to understand a little bit of numbers from the marketplace about the number of candidates. Also, it's very important and very useful to read relevant articles on Wikipedia, because on Wikipedia you can find like almost everything. Then, during the meeting with the hiring manager, you are developing a sourcing strategy, which helps you to source the candidates and also specifically passive ones. So for this, you need title, geography, keywords, websites, and minus words. Search strategy is a document that you are preparing with the hiring manager. Here you have an example. You just prepare yourself, then you meet with the hiring manager during your intake meeting, and you discuss everything you prepared before. And hiring manager makes different changes, adds something, or even removes something if it's not correct or if it's not up to date. Also, when you are talking to hiring manager about the requisition form, there is something you have to focus on. So when you are reviewing a recruitment application or recruitment requisition, you should have a few questions in your mind. Platform issues, network environment, company size or number of users, current team, level of skills required, skills mismatch, hiring manager experience. We will see in this course how to be more precise with all of this stuff. And this one is important. Separate mandatory requirements, wishes, and what will be an advantage for the best candidates. Because usually when you have the description, hiring managers want to find the ideal candidate, which does not exist. And it's better to understand, okay, if we can't find the ideal candidate, who would be go-to person? Here, the example of requisition, usually it has some description, then of course it has required minimum skills and desired experience. So something like that you will receive as a starting point. Then prepare questions for clarification. The first one, the 3 most important skills that is needed: timeline, pace of work, most recent technology implementations, and level of development. During our course, we will learn that there are 3 levels of development: user interface, or they call it front end, business logic or back end, and data access. This is a database developers. And also there are DevOps. They work with infrastructure. Then preparing questions for clarifications. The first one is about process. Here is an example of question to hiring manager. What process or standards do you use for documentation, code creation, code review, peer review of developer code, And version control. Do you have standards that everyone has to follow, or is it a mixed environment of ad hoc and structural elements? Criteria for choosing one of the two candidates and certifications. The question about certification could be like this. Is there a specific certification requirement in your job description that I should know about? Is it needed to certify the competency of the candidate, or do you have a requirement to partner with a software vendor? Yeah, and after additional questions, you may have more detailed requisition form, which is easily could be matched with different profiles and candidates. Now, based on this form, you develop questions for candidates like this. Based on your experience in .NET development, what level of development do you prefer to work with? What does your average work week look like? How many releases do you do in a week or month? How would you change this if you could? Which .NET component do you prefer to work with, C#, VB.NET, or ASP.NET? Tell me a little about your contribution for creating a process-driven development environment or methodology. For example, documentation, code review, process, unit testing, etc. SharePoint is a major development focus on this job. Could you share with me a SharePoint customization or development project you done in the past? Please start with the problem and then process you went through to complete the project. This is the kind of examples of questions to your candidates. Now we will talk about fundamentals of sourcing, because this one you need to source passive candidates. This is a very interesting thing. As soon as you try to source candidates with Google, at some point you'll see this notification. Don't be scary. This is a normal standard. It shows you that Google is not prepared for using to source candidates. Great. So sourcing candidates, when we talk about sourcing candidates, we usually talk about sourcing passive, but it's conditional passive. All candidates are not passive. Actually, I would say that are active passive or passive active, because based on LinkedIn research, 80% of passive candidates are open to consider interesting positions. So Boolean search, let's start from the history, was developed by the English mathematician George Boole. So Boolean is just based on this surname. In 1847, he developed Boolean algebra. And now Boolean search is a basic knowledge of any sourcer and of course recruiter, and specifically IT recruiter. Basic operators are supported by many search engines, not just Google, like GitHub, LinkedIn, and others. The basic operators are and, or, and or not, and they allow you to expand or narrow your search. Combinations of operators works like magic and helps you to find needed resumes. And at this course, you will receive lots of different queries for different positions that you can use, and they will be based on these search operators. And there are also three modifiers. Brackets, asterisks, and quotes. Great, so search operators. The first one is operator AND. It serves to narrow search results to less search results. For example, if you need a designer from Berlin who knows Photoshop, you put designer and Berlin and Photoshop. So it will show you only those pages that contains all three words together on the same page. So if you just use just designer, it will show you every page with designer in it. When you add designer and Berlin, it narrows only to those pages that have these two terms. And when you add Photoshop, it search for the pages with all three words, much more less pages. More often than not, any space in the search string is taken as an AND. So for example, in Google, you don't need to use AND word because Google doesn't understand it, doesn't support it. You just type all three words, and it means for Google that Google has to find the results with all three words. And if you use this search operator AND, it should be in uppercase. And here is the comment how as the search engine understands your command. Find me the only pages that have this and must have this. Now, search operator OR. It serves to expand search results. It is important to use when the word has synonyms. So that's why we use synonyms. Designer or artist. Now it finds all pages with designers or artists on it. In Google, you can replace OR with this symbol. Developer and then Java and G2EE. This character is convenient to use when there are many words in a query, like this. And it tells search engine, find me any pages that have this or this on the page. Now, operator minus, which means not. Search to narrow the search result, exclude certain words from the output, like designer not 2D. Google does not work with operator not, and you must use minus instead. Designer minus 2D. Make sure there is no space after the minus. Yeah, because otherwise it doesn't work. If you want to exclude the whole phrase, put it in quotes. Designer minus 2D artist. And it tells your search engine, find me all those pages that have this and must not have this. Then quotes. Actually, this is how it's used in books, but in Google, you must use exactly this kind of quotes because this kind of quotes is not supported by Google. So to search for an exact word or set of words prohibits Google from searching for similar words or synonyms. So if you put chief accountant, it searches exactly chief accountant. And it tells the search engine, find me the only pages where there is an exact mention of this word without its variations or words. Great. Now advanced search operators that will help you to find more people. The first one, which is the most important, is called site. Site and 2 points. Search for a particular site, and it's also known as X-ray search. So for example, site LinkedIn. Also, you can search by domain, site and then domain UA for Ukraine. It is for him that we must form hypotheses about where our candidates might be. You can't put a space between the operator and the site word. And for example, you may search for profiles on the site like this. And it tells, find me the information I am looking for on this particular site. Here you can see some ready requests that I highly recommend you to test and see how it works. Great. And also there are special builders for LinkedIn. These two, you just put all these fields and populate them with different keywords, and it creates your X-ray search request. Then related, it helps you to find a site with similar content, because sometimes you found very interesting site and you want to understand if this site have something similar sites. Then in title, it's searched by page title. Usually page title is something that you have in your browser at the top. And if you put these words like resume or in different language, actually I recommend you use keywords in English and in your local language. So for example, if I'm from Ukraine, I use Ukrainian word of resume in Ukrainian language. And all in title, search for all specified words in the title. All in title, Office Manager resume means that it tries to find Office Manager resume in the title. Great. Some helpful requests for you to test this search operator. Now in URL search operator, it searches for specific key phrases in the page address. Often the word we are looking for is used in the address. Like we could use resume, yeah, and it's used in address. Cool. Now file type. This operator tells the Google to search information in files of specific types. Like this file type, PDF resume. It tries to find all PDFs files with the word resume in it. And popular file types. Now, typical useful requests based on all this information. Later on this course, you will have more specific requests. Like, for example, you will have more specific requests for LinkedIn to find those who open to new positions, to find those who open to relocation, to find those who are not working now, and lots of different other searches. So I will provide you on this course with lots of different ready-to-use queries. So just take it and use it. Your homework: for beginners, make a list of 50 IT companies in your city. And for the experienced ones, make a search query with search operators for one of your jobs, just based on examples from this webinar. Some books I recommend you to read: IT Recruitment, of course, and Joy Inc., like to feel yourself inside the company, which is very interesting. And today we are finishing our first class, and during our second class, we will talk about how to find different people, and we will talk about marketing people in IT. So this is it. I want to thank you for participating in this webinar. I invite you to join our course. And if you are already on our course, I'm waiting your homework, and see you soon. Bye-bye.